The Indus Valley, 1 million people in cities that left no kings. What if the largest civilization on Earth ran for 700 years, housed 1 million people, traded across 2,000 miles, and left behind no kings, no temples, no palaces, and a writing system nobody can read? The Harappan civilization, also called the Indus Valley civilization, flourished between 2600 and 1900 BCE. At its peak, it covered more ground than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, stretching from the Arabian Sea to the foothills of Afghanistan. Mohenjo-daro alone may have held 40,000 residents. Across the entire Harappan network, estimates reach 1 million people, population figures on par with Sumer and Egypt, the civilizations that fill every history curriculum. Here is where the story gets genuinely strange. Harappan cities were laid out on a cardinal grid, streets running north-south and east-west, oriented to compass points with a precision that wouldn't reappear in urban planning until the Roman Empire. Beneath those streets ran covered brick drains, a citywide sewage network connecting individual homes to main channels that emptied outside the city walls. No civilization on Earth built anything comparable for another 2,000 years. The buildings themselves were multi-story, fired brick, not mud brick, a construction standard so rare for 2500 BCE that early 20th century excavators refused to believe the ruins were that old. The bricks were kiln-fired to a precise length-to-width ratio, every one of them. Public wells were distributed throughout residential blocks, not centralized at a palace or temple. Archaeologists have counted over 700 wells at Mohenjo-daro alone. That distribution implies infrastructure designed to serve the population broadly, not a ruling class. And now, the mystery at the center of this civilization. Despite 7 centuries of sophisticated urban life, archaeologists have found no palaces, no royal tombs, no monumental temples, and no art depicting a ruler. Every other Bronze Age civilization left us kings. Harappa did not. This isn't absence of evidence from poor excavation. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are 2 of the most extensively excavated sites in South Asian archaeology. The absence is real. Whatever governed this civilization, it left no physical monument to personal power. What they did leave behind is equally striking. Standardized weights made from chert stone, found from the Arabian Sea coast to Afghanistan, all conforming to the same binary system. A merchant in Lothal and a merchant in Shortagai used identical measures. That uniformity implies something powerful, either a central authority enforcing standards across 2,000 miles, or a mercantile culture so deeply shared that independent cities maintained identical systems voluntarily. The weights follow a precise doubling ratio, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And carnelian beads manufactured at Harappan workshops in Gujarat have been recovered from royal tombs in Mesopotamia. This wasn't internal bookkeeping. It was the operating infrastructure of international commerce. Then there is the script. Over 4,000 inscribed objects, seals, tablets, pottery, carry signs in the Indus script. No bilingual key like the Rosetta Stone has ever surfaced. As of 2024, the script remains entirely undeciphered, one of the longest-standing puzzles in linguistics. Because we can't read the script, we have no names, no kings, no priests, no merchants, no myths. Every other ancient civilization of comparable scale left us a narrative. The Egyptians left the Book of the Dead. The Sumerians left the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Harappans left us a question carved into soapstone, repeated 4,000 times in a language we cannot hear. Consider Dholavira, a Harappan city in the Rann of Kutch in present-day Gujarat. Built on an island between two seasonal streams, it featured 16 reservoirs and channels engineered to capture every drop of monsoon rainfall, sustaining a city in a semi-arid environment for centuries. But around 1900 BCE, the great Harappan cities began to empty. Not conquered, not burned, just gradually abandoned. Population shifted eastward toward the Gangetic Plain. The urban experiment that had run for 7 centuries simply wound down. For decades, the leading explanation was an Aryan invasion, nomadic groups from the Central Asian steppe displacing the Harappans by force. This theory rested largely on excavator R.E.M. Wheeler's 1947 interpretation of skeletal remains at Mohenjo-daro, which he read as massacre victims. Physical anthropology has since discredited that reading. The skeletons show no consistent evidence of violent trauma and date to different periods of occupation. The more compelling answer comes from paleoclimate data. Sediment cores and speleothem records, cave mineral deposits that preserve ancient rainfall signals, show a sustained weakening of the South Asian monsoon beginning around 2100 BCE and intensifying through 1900 BCE. This drought signal is part of a global climate event now called the 4.2 kiloyear event, a 2-century aridification pulse that also destabilized the Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia and weakened the Old Kingdom in Egypt during the same period. Simultaneously, satellite imagery and geological surveys have confirmed that the Ghaggar-Hakra river system, likely the ancient Saraswati of Vedic texts, dried up during this same period. Hundreds of Harappan sites cluster along its now dry bed. The Ghaggar-Hakra wasn't a minor waterway. It supported flood retreat agriculture across hundreds of kilometers of the most densely settled Harappan territory. When it shrank, the agricultural base that fed those cities shrank with it. But honest archaeology demands a complication. The decline wasn't simultaneous across the civilization. Some cities emptied by 1900 BCE. Others persisted until 1700 BCE. A few sites in Gujarat show population growth during the same period. No single cause explains all of it. What the evidence increasingly supports is not collapse, but transformation. As the Indus and Ghaggar-Hakra systems became less reliable, populations moved eastward into the Gangetic Plain, a wetter, more productive region. Migration as adaptation, not catastrophe. Harappan material culture didn't simply vanish. Black on redware pottery, a distinctive Harappan ceramic tradition defined by geometric designs painted in black over a red slip, appears in excavations at Atranjakhera and other Gangetic Plain sites well into the 2nd millennium BCE, giving archaeologists a traceable thread connecting the Indus cities to the cultures that followed them. Step back, and the Harappan case poses a genuinely unsettling question for political theory. We assume large-scale urban civilization requires centralized authority, kings, priests, armies, monuments. Harappa ran for 7 centuries without leaving a single royal inscription, a single throne room, or a single burial that concentrates wealth the way Tutankhamun's tomb or the royal cemetery of Ur does. That is not an absence of evidence. That is evidence of a different answer. Those chert weights encode a doubling ratio, 1 to 2, 4 to 8, 16 to 32 to 64. That is mathematically unambiguous. No rounding errors, no regional variance, no local exceptions across 2,000 miles of trade network. A system that precise doesn't emerge accidentally. It was designed, adopted, and maintained. That is governance. It just left no throne. And recall those covered drains beneath every street. Sewage infrastructure benefits everyone equally. It can't be hoarded by a king. Building it required collective investment and collective maintenance. That is not a small political achievement for 2500 BCE. The script remains the locked door. Computational analyses have confirmed it encodes a natural language. It carries the statistical properties of real linguistic information. But without a bilingual text, the specific language and the social structures it describes stays sealed. Here is a fact that reframes everything. Fewer than 10% of known Harappan sites have been systematically excavated. Over 1,000 sites are documented across Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. The civilization we've been describing is built on a fraction of the available evidence. Excavations at Rocky Garhi in Haryana, potentially the largest Harappan city, larger than Mohenjo-daro, are ongoing and have already produced new evidence about burial practices and material culture that complicates earlier models of social uniformity. The Harappan case is also a climate story. A civilization that built its water infrastructure around monsoon reliability. Dholavira's 16 reservoirs, the flood retreat agriculture of the Ghadar Hakra, was acutely exposed when that reliability failed across 2 centuries. The parallel is specific, not poetic. The Colorado River, which supplies water to 40 million people across 7 U.S. states, has been in shortage declaration since 2021, the first in the river's recorded management history. Lake Mead, its primary reservoir, dropped to 27% capacity in 2022. The Harappans engineered brilliantly for the climate they had, so do we. The question their ruins leave open is whether brilliant engineering is enough when the climate itself is the variable that shifts. We opened asking how 1 million people built a civilization and left no kings. The honest answer is, we don't fully know. But here's what we can say with confidence. The next excavation season at Rocky Garhi, or the next computational breakthrough on the Indus script, could rewrite this entire story. 90% of the evidence is still in the ground. Whatever the Harappans were, we've barely started listening. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more.